This conference will now be recorded.
Please, we have a quorum. Father, thank you for today. Watch over our first responders, watch over all of us. All right, at this time, do we have any public comment?
Yes, sir, we do.
Ashley Majors. Council, actually, I'm just wanting to say thank you to our brave firefighters that battled the fire yesterday evening. I just commend you on your brave service battling that fire. Thank you again for your day in and day out that you give to this community. Thank you, Chief Estes, here tonight, and to please pass it on to your men and women. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments?
No, sir.
All right, at this time, I'd like to read a statement of my own, which I believe is both timely and necessary to mirror what Ms. Majors just said. I want to take this opportunity to thank our first responders, Rhome Fire Department, Rhome PD, for their great efforts battling that massive brush fire yesterday. I also want to thank the other external entities that answered the call to aid in these efforts. Among these were Newark Fire Department, New Fairview Fire Department, Hazlet, Wise County ESD for one, Paradise, Cottondale, Justin, Texas Forestry Service, Texas Parks and Wildlife, Wise County Fire Marshal, Wise County Emergency Management, Louisville Fire Department, Parker County, Texas State Troopers, Boyd PD, TxDOT, and the Montague EMS. This was truly a team effort. And another reason why we aid our other departments in the surrounding city, because they come to our aid when we need it. Our first responders, as well as the rest of our city staff, bear an enormous burden, working to meet the ever-increasing demands being placed on our city. And they do it working out of facility, a lot of times without all the necessary equipment. They're short-staffed and with below standard pay. And in the case of most of our firefighters, no pay at all. That is why I want to applaud our city council for having the courage to do everything our budget will allow to help alleviate some of these burdens and at every opportunity. Their courage and foresight is what is going to ensure a bright future for our city and its residents. As we do the work of ensuring the city can meet the demands being placed on it. That being said, I'd like to make some announcements. On September 2nd, is the city office will be closed for Labor Day. September 3rd will be bulk trash pickup day. September 4th, we'll test our weather sirens, weather permitting. September 9th is the P&Z, Planning and Zoning meeting at 6 p.m. September the 12th will be our next city council meeting at 6 p.m. And the Citizens Police Academy sign up on the police department's Facebook page or call the department for registration opportunities. Classes begin September 24th. Do we have any announcements from council?
I would just like to say, Mayor, that we have some spots left in that Citizens Police Academy, and as someone who has been through the inaugural class, I would really recommend to anybody who's interested in learning more about what the police department and the fire department has a cameo appearance to talk about what their role is, to sign up and to get involved, because it truly is a remarkable several weeks that they spend with those folks. So be sure and contact them and get on the roster so that we can get this class made. We had a lot of people online who were disappointed that they had missed the first calling for folks to go through the Citizens Police Academy. So we've done everything we can at this point to get the word out. So if you were interested, please sign up.
All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. All right, moving on to the regular agenda. The discussion and any necessary action for the following. First, we will have is Councilmember King, community luncheon.
I'd like to move to table this item to a future meeting.
Do that. All right, item number 2, creation and or appointment of a member to the beautification committee. Ma'am, that's yours.
Yes, sir, thank you. We were approached by Mr. and Mrs. Priest, who are residents of Rome, to form and resurrect a beautification committee on behalf of the community. They have 3 points that they would like to volunteer for, or 3 points they'd like council to consider. In the past, and I'm going to read a little bit from the letter that they've submitted, they had volunteered to maintain the flower beds at City Hall. They are again offering to volunteer to do that work. They will provide all the plants, the maintenance. The only thing they're asking the city to provide is the water that would keep the plants healthy. And we would, of course, be looking to plant any type of vegetation that is drought resistant and for this particular region. So they're asking council to consider reinstating the beautification committee and through that accepting their volunteerism for those flower beds in front of City Hall. They'd also like to volunteer to maintain and plant the flower beds in the park, along with anyone else who would like to volunteer for that particular opportunity. They would like to work somewhat with Public Works, but handle most of the work themselves because Public Works has a fairly full plate at this point. And they're going to ask for park volunteers to work on landscaping projects and events at some point. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. They're also asking the City Council to consider having 2 volunteer groups, one for beautification and the other for events, so that we have folks who have interest in different areas, and that might encourage those who want to volunteer either for the beautification or for the events planning. The third thing that they would like to establish is a volunteer committee for all city events. And I apologize for the system. We are still working through all the kinks. They are not necessarily interested in volunteering for that particular committee, but they do understand that it's important for the community, and as the community continues to grow, that's something that should be, in their opinion, separate from the beautification portion. So that's the 3 items in their letter. They are actually not here this evening, but they have submitted their application for the beautification committee if that's something the council would like to take any particular direction or give staff direction on.
Do we have to create a beautification committee? Is that
At current, we have a Parks and Rec board. We do not have a beautification committee itself. So according to Carvin, that would be something that we would need to create. And then I would suggest that we have at least a staff liaison to said board. Anytime we have volunteers who are involved for being a part of the community and giving of their time altruistically, that's a wonderful thing that we want to make sure that we encourage and that we cultivate. However, they can't do it by themselves. And so they need someone within the organization that they have touch with. So we would need to figure out who that is going forward. It could be somebody at City Hall, especially if they're working on those flower beds. It may or may not be Mr. Dominguez based upon his workload. So I guess the first one in order is if council wants to create that type of committee.
yeah, I believe that would be a great idea.
That's going to be fine language, but you could allow it to exist without having some sanction. So, 2 months, and then you want to put it in that's less than that. Thanks for the news. Allow that committee to work.
Oh, well, then we'll just allow it to happen.
All right, now the committee form and
Now, one of the other things that they have in their letter that I failed to mention is, in the past, the priests have hosted a plant sale, and they've donated the proceeds from that to the beautification. They are asking that this be a city-sponsored plant sale, and I think that would be a wonderful thing, that we are involved with all of that, that we can assist in that particular area. Their goal for the beautification committee is that they can potentially either cultivate, donate, however they're looking to do that, enough plants that when we sell it, it would go right back into that beautification fund. And if there's any expenditures either for the park itself or for in front of City Hall, we could potentially use those funds going forward. Right now, there's about $1,200 in that beautification committee fund.
I would think if it's for the betterment of the city, for sure we could sponsor it.
And just like any other fund that we have or any other line item in our budget, that is audited every year, just like any of the other accounts. And our team goes through that very closely to make sure that we've got the right receipts matching up and we haven't miscoded anything. So we would have an accountability for any money raised and any money expended. And I am happy to take the lead on that and make sure that we coordinate that with anybody who's on that committee.
Are we also wanting to consider the city events?
So I would ask that the city consider that at some point. We're not ready for events at this point. We just are stretched too thin. And unless we have folks that are coming forward, and if you'll recall, Council, we just appointed someone to our Parks and Recs board, but they're the only person on the board. So we're going to have to find some additional members. And from that, I think we could throw out potentially folks who are interested in events. So I think it's an excellent idea. I just don't think we're ready to start down that path at this point.
Item required. Moving on, item number 3, professional development agreement with Structure Builders Group.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a pretty standard agreement that the city uses on behalf of the community. You can see from the agreement itself, it talks about any developer who comes to Rome, and this is not abnormal for any city, generally deposits a certain amount of cash from which we draw legal fees, engineering fees, hopefully city planning fees, any type of fire review, etc., that is reimbursed to the city, so the city is not bearing the cost for that development to come in. So when you're looking at development, one of the things we want to make sure that we're doing is growth needs to pay for growth. The city does not need to pay for growth within the community because that is a business to the developer to a great extent, and we want them to carry the cost. So this agreement is one that Rome has used multiple times in the past with P&B, with Prairie Point developers and others, so this is fairly standard. I have worked with Mr. Barnes. He is in agreement with this particular draft of this document. From here, we will work with our attorney to finish the development agreement and the economic development agreement to establish the plan development for the Hickory property that he's going to bring forward, but those will come through P&Z and City Council at a later time. This is just establishing that escrow account so that we can start all the review processes.
How do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to authorize the city administrator to execute the agreement for professional services with Structured Building Group for the proposed property on Hickory.
Do I have a second? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All. Thank you. Okay. Moving on. Number 4, discussion of any necessary action for professional city planners agreement.
Thank you, Mayor. This is one that was brought to my attention through the hiring of Ms. Fowler as our new city secretary. They use Dunaway firm, am I saying that correctly? Dunaway Associates in New Fairview to perform city planning services for New Fairview, and that's something that we don't currently have in our pool. It is very much needed. Their costs would also be paid by anyone who is looking to come in and develop within the city. This would also be part of a professional services agreement that we would enter into with anyone who is coming forward with a larger development to a great extent. And this gives me the authority to execute that contract with Dunaway Associates, and any of those costs are borne by third parties, not by the city at this time. One thing I would like to bring back as we continue to streamline our budget processes and have a greater grasp on where our resources are, a city planner would be extremely beneficial to Rome in and of itself. So at some point, I may bring back an agreement where we can actually enter into work product with them directly on behalf of the city.
You have me at the third bullet, coordination with TxDOT on municipal issues.
I think it's a good thing itself, and it's money wise. It'll end up saving us a lot of money in the long run.
And we also have Mr. Cook here from Dunaway Associates. If you have any questions, he's sitting in the front row. He was gracious enough to come to our meeting to answer anything that you may have of him.
But what did we do prior to having we didn't do anything. And what would that cause if we didn't have the city planner? I mean, what could happen?
I'm used to having a city planner to review development and look at lot layout and to make suggestions to developers to improve products that they're bringing to the community. But Mr. Cook, if you'd like to step to the microphone, I think you could offer some more insight. Would you please, I'm sorry, before we stop you, can you push the button on the microphone? Yes, it's right there. There we go.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Mayor and Council, my name is Stephen Cook. I'm the Senior Planner with Dunaway Associates. I've been with the company for about 2.5 years, but I've been a municipal planner for cities as a city employee for 28 years. So I know the process and what we do, what we're here to help the community do. Because as the new development comes in, we look at your zoning, we look at your subdivision regulations, we look at all the development standards, and we make sure that the developer meets those standards and then fulfills that. He makes a promise in his development agreement with the community. We make sure that he fulfills that promise in the way that it moves forward, so that you have confidence in, along with any engineering that the development is built, that it comes in with that process. We can also maybe at a future point help in modifying your zoning and subdivision regulations so they accurately reflect where the community is going, what your vision is for the community, what your community's vision is, to make sure that they're also in agreement with current state law. So we're multi-disciplinary firm, engineering, structural engineering, and planning and landscape architecture. So we've had a great relationship with the last since 2015. I think it's the original contract in the area. So we're very familiar with Wise County and we're very familiar with this area. And we know that there's a lot of development happening around you and coming to you. So we want to make sure that we're able to help you out and make sure that it's done correctly.
So the financial impact is as needed. It's not.
So currently, the financial impact of the city would be zero. We would pass those costs along, but at some point in the future, we would bring back to council if we were to expend any of our funds.
In the past, having going through this with these developers, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm not a professional city planner, and there's a bazillion items on a checklist that a city would need to look at. I'm not an expert. Having somebody to help us not miss anything for the city would be a plus. And again, it's a win-win for the city, and it'll save us a lot of money down the road. We had a problem with one of our neighborhoods who had a development agreement that didn't cover their underground utilities. And when they came in to expand it, they put everything above ground, but there was nothing in there that was missed. And when the agreements were all drawn up, and I just think it's nice to have an expert to talk to that knows what they're doing, help save us from these pitfalls.
I agree. I think it's essential in a fast growth. I think it's essential in a fast growth area. So,
Discussion? Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to authorize the city administrator to execute the agreement with Dunaway for city planning services.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. Thank you. All right, moving on. We are moving to the item number 5, technology and cybersecurity. I believe we're going to speak to the technology portion first.
Correct, Mayor. We're going to speak about technology, and we worked with the attorney. We do have verbiage on our agenda to talk about cybersecurity executive session. That was a suggestion by our vendor so that we are able to speak a little bit more freely and not compromise our current system. So what I would need from council, if you'll recall when we discussed this the last time with the TML cybersecurity data breach response coverage, I don't have clear direction for the level of coverage that we would like to pursue. If we want to go with the $1,000 at the core level or the $1,250, $1,250, wow, that's been a long week. At the core plus level for the FY 24-25 budget year. So if you'll recall, there are different levels in the TML coverage as it relates to what is included in each one of those. So we currently have $1 million coverage, but it's going down to 500,000 if we do the core. If we do the core plus, it stays at $1 million because they're changing their on how they fund this. And one of the things that we heard from Ryan Young, our technology consultant, is that this is the best coverage for the least amount of money that we can obtain as a city from TML. If we went out privately, which was some of the questions that council brought forward, it would cost us significantly more. So I would just ask for some direction on whether you want to go at the core or the core plus level. There's a difference of $250 a year.
Based on what was heard at the last meeting, at this point, we have to core plus level. So it seems like a great value, even though they are increasing the rates. $250 incremental annual cost for additional $500,000 coverage seems that's that.
All right, thank you, sir.
We would need a
Yes,
motion
we
on
need
the
a
core
motion
plus.
to on what you would like the staff to do.
I move that city administrator pursue the Core Plus cybersecurity insurance coverage for TML.
Have a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. All right, at this time, we're going to move into executive session. According to section 551.071, consultation with our attorney, any litigation settlement offer, or to seek advice from our attorney, as well as section 551.074, personnel, to discuss appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, or hear a complaint or charge against an officer or employee in executive session unless an officer or employee requests a public hearing. And Chief of Police, thank you. Time now is 6:20.
This conference will now be recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
It is now 6:46. We are now in executive session, the results of which I would like to make an announcement that at this point, the city administrator has accepted the resignation of our chief of police, who will be leaving us in January to accept the position as the chief deputy of Wise County Sheriff's Office. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for Chief Davis. Wish him all the best. He's been an asset to this city, and I know he'll be an asset to the county. and we all wish him all the best and all the success where he's going next. So I think the county's got a bright future with him going up there to work with the new sheriff. And the council has directed staff to begin the process of hiring a new chief. Process will begin. Moving on, next item on the agenda is the budget for FY 23-24, and we'll just continue.
Yes, sir. If you will bear with me, I will get the presentation pulled up. And for those that are here in the audience, you will notice that we have rearranged the room just a little bit, and you no longer have as easy of an access to the TV. However, we are looking to put one directly over council so that you can also see the presentations just a little bit better. If you would like the slide deck, I had copies over there prepared for folks to look at. So just bear with us. Okay. So we have talked about the budget in two different sessions already, one in July and one at our last meeting on August the 8th. So on July 11th and on August the 8th, and I'd like to just go over some of the budget assumptions with you all again. We do have budget neutral revenues and expenditures. We also have health insurance rates that have not been put into the budget as of today. We are anticipating, or we do budget for a 10% increase, hoping that that is enough of a cushion. We won't know until closer to October what that number looks like, but I will bring that back and update you as we go along if there are any budget adjustments that need to be made. You will also recall that there were new positions in this budget that we requested in our public safety services, which is one of the highest ranked service delivery areas for the city of Rome as far as our residents are concerned. I brought to council the idea of hiring one firefighter position, which are 3 people, that's 1 person for each shift, where we would actually have 2 firefighters on each shift, hopefully every day, and then we could augment with part-timers and volunteers. What we discussed at the last meeting was for council to fund 2 firefighter positions and for me to pursue a partnership or an additional partnership with Rolling V Ranch PMV Development for the 3rd position. I will tell you that I talked to Mr. Pinkoffs today, and he is unable to commit to an ongoing cost for another firefighter position at this time. I am in discussion with him about a one-time donation to the fire department that could be used in a variety of different ways. He has committed to an amount as of now, but I would like to go back and have another conversation with him in light of some of the discussions I've had with the chief. When we look at our fire department, we all know that they are severely understaffed, even when they use part-timers and volunteers, and much of their equipment is 20 years old. We do have 1 brand new brush truck. We are in the process of acquiring another new brush truck, but both of our mini pumper and our engine are past their lifespan. We bought both of those used. We are about to pay one off this year, to the tune of about $37,000 in this current fiscal year. So in the next fiscal year, this is something in our long-term capital improvement conversations that we'll have to look at. But we definitely need to determine ways that we can continue to fund our public safety. One of the other positions that we talked about at the last meeting was the idea of hiring another sergeant. I have talked with Chief Vivas, and in light of the impending change in leadership in the police department, I would recommend that we pause any hiring of additional personnel until we have a new police chief hired and let them get their feet under them, and then they can make any recommendations they have for restructuring, and then we can reevaluate at that time. So that leaves council with the decision of if they want to try and shift the money for the sergeant into a 3rd firefighter, or if they want to hold at the current level that we're at. Those are all conversations that we can continue to have, but we have focused any of our staff recommendations and requests in public safety because that is our greatest need. You also know that we have requested 2 additional public works technicians. You all asked us to do some analysis of the water and wastewater rate study before any decisions were made in that particular area. So it is our intention to bring back the analysis at the second meeting in September, which will then allow us to make a budget adjustment if we so choose to add those 2 technician positions. We will not have that ready by the 12th, but we will have it ready by that second meeting in September. Any questions on personnel? So one of the things included in this presentation is the debt tax rates that are included in this conversation. We have seen on social media that there are at least one person, if not 2, that have posted that the tax rate is going up considerably based on bonuses and staff raises. That is not the case. The tax rate is moving to pay for the debt, which was voter approved. That is why we took it to the voters. We also took an increase in the tax rate to fund operations, which was not approved, and so we adjusted this current year budget to reflect that reduction. But the 0.618767 is the voter approval tax rate, which is calculated based on that debt that we have to service for the 3 infrastructure projects that were approved by the residents of Rome, which we very much needed. This money will go to service that debt, but it is not a large tax increase to fund staff. We are still underfunded in public works, police, and fire. So I want to be very clear about that because social media at times can misconstrue the things that we are using the funds for, and we want to continue in the positive vein that we are establishing with our residents and make sure that we continue to be as transparent as possible in all of our dealings. One of the interesting things to look at is the maintenance and operations, which is basically the money that the city receives to run all of our business side of the house. So you'll see that when you look at the current rate, it is going from 212,447 to 251,728. That is based on the debt rate. It is also based on the valuation of homes. When that move is made, that changes our budget by about $16,000. So I want to be very clear that that move is not a significant influx of revenue that allows us to pay for a new firefighter, for instance. So when I ran the changes, it's a little bit of a different story when you think, well, your operations is going up by potentially 4 cents. That may be the case. However, that is also affected by debt, and it doesn't generate quite as much as you might think that it does. When you look at the debt rate, you can see that that's going from about 12 cents to 37 cents. Again, to deal with the funding of the $17.5 million in debt that we have invested back in the community for West Wastewater Treatment Plant, as well as potential water wells and the sanitary sewer lines that we are going to be replacing on behalf of Rhome. One of the things that's interesting to note is in this current fiscal year, we have spent about $165,000 on emergency repairs. The bulk of that went to the overflow at the West Plant from the rain events earlier this year that TCEQ mandated that we remediate. That's enough to fund the bond. So you either pay for the emergency repairs and the remediation, or we pay for the debt, and we have the facilities and the infrastructure that we need, which will help diversify our tax base. As I've mentioned to council before, I continue to talk with people about businesses they want to bring to Rome. I cannot do a large expansion on that plant until we have a new one. So once we have that in place, once we deal with some of our water flow issues, you will see new businesses come to Rome, which will then diversify the tax base with commercial opportunities, which will then allow some of the burden to be taken off of the residents, which is exactly what we're looking for within our budgetary portfolio, if you will. Right now, we're very heavily residential. So I want to try and be as clear and educate everyone. I'm happy to answer any questions on these issues. This shows our tax rate history over the years. You can see that as recently as 2021, we were at 48 cents, and it's gone down as debt has been paid off. This was not shifted into operations. This is simply a result of bonds and indebtedness that we've paid off over those years. So the tax rate that the council has directed us to pursue and that we have published in the newspaper is the voter approval rate at 0.618768. The feedback I received from council was we do not want to try to change anything in maintenance and operations because we have already issued debt and that was already a commitment that the residents made. So we are going to try and hold and do everything we can with our current staffing levels and with the sales and use tax increases that we are seeing to continue to fund any expansion that we have in operations costs. So just to give you some idea, by adopting the voter approval rate, that does not allow for petition. So this will be our rate for next year. Does that make sense? So when you look here at the tax rate, I've broken it out by maintenance and operations and by the tax rate, and you can see the changes. There are some changes in compensation for staff, as you would imagine that would be done each year on an annual basis. When we talked about the pay scales last year for staff, we established basic pay scales for each position that has a minimum amount to pay, a midpoint, and a maximum amount to pay. We did not have that prior to my arrival, and that is very helpful for recruitment and for setting expectations for staff. We now have that. We have looked at the actual pay scales that we are paying people, and we are moving them closer to the midpoint or even the minimum in some instances. But we're having to do that over multiple years. So I know that last year there was discussions about the percentage of the move, and that is wholly based upon the fact that all of our staff members were below market prior to any of those changes. So any that council makes this year will be an additional step in that path of bringing our team towards competitive pay rates that allows us to actually recruit people. So when you look at the payroll adjustments here for general fund, I can minimize it just a little bit so you can see all of it at once. You look at administration, the proposed change is for $9,700. When you look at those pay scale changes, I have included what retirement would be estimated at, as well as a 10% or a potential move in insurance. So that impact would be about $18,000 for administration, approximately $65,000 for police, fire and EMS would be about $30,000 for a total impact to general fund for our existing staff of about $110,000. When you look at public works and you age forward any increase in payroll for those four individuals, it's about $20,645 for a total move of about $30,495 out of utility fund. And that's very important to understand that we have two main funds that we pay for things out of. Utility fund is separate and apart and is based on water and sewer rates and anything that we bill out when we sell water to other folks. So you don't count that in general fund because it is not paid out of that. When you look at the new position requests, the two firefighters, I have adjusted those amounts, would be about $152,000 in addition of an impact to the budget. And if we hold on the police sergeant, we estimated that to be up about $102,000. So that will be at council's discretion whether we want to start with the two and then potentially add a third, or if we want to go ahead and make that decision to move forward with 3 firefighters and consider the police sergeant addition upon any request from an incoming chief. If there's any discussion on that, I'm happy to entertain it. If there's not, we'll move on.
Maybe it would be prudent to keep that money in the piggy bank so that we have it when the new chief comes in. If we don't, I'd rather have better to have it not need than need it not have it.
If we move the sergeant to the fire department and then we hire a sergeant, where would we go?
That is the conundrum. We would not necessarily have enough funds in this current fiscal year to pay for the sergeant position. So that would be the hard decision for council to make. We would have to use some of fund balance to pay for that position. Now, one of the things that you all have directed me to do is to pursue in the May election a potential change, if the residents approve it, where some of our sales and use tax is actually being used to fund public safety. Right now, we have a property tax offset where a portion of our sales and use tax is being used to offset property tax for businesses and residents in Rome. And that generates about $600,000 to $700,000 a year. So if the voters approve and we move that half cent of sales tax to pay for public safety only, that would augment police and fire and would free up $600,000 or $700,000 additional dollars for that use that we are not going to realize in our general fund for probably 5 to 10 years. So that would really allow us to move forward in how we're protecting both homes and businesses and residents in the community. But that will be a voter approved decision. So Mr. Johnson, to your point, if council made that decision later on in the year, we would use some of our fund balance, which we do have.
You're saying some, is it going to be enough for a sergeant?
Yes, sir.
Hire?
Yes, we have over 300 days last time I checked in fund balance. And council's policy is 120.
To Mr. Johnson's point, if we were to take, like, right about $51,000 for a firefighter. So if we were to pull that from the police sergeant, what we have allocated is $102,000. So that would be about half, which is other taxes.
Potentially, yes. I mean, we have the funds to make both of those higher. That's not the issue. It's just where are we pulling it from? And if we partner with P&B, they may be willing to fund half of the position or 3/4 of the position and we fund the rest. That's still a conversation I would need to have with Mr. Greenwald. Yes, ma'am.
If you were watching social media and the people that were in reunion and for them,
He was very receptive to partnering with us, and he may consider funding a position for a whole year. The big decision point I took from our conversation is he cannot commit to that year after year at this time. So I can go back to him and ask him, can you commit to another firefighter for 1 year? And that may be very doable. But I asked him to pay for another one throughout the budget year, and he could not do that for that long of a period at this point. So that may be a door that's still open. I just have no conversations with him. But I will say he was receptive to the discussion, and he was interested in being a partner with Rhome.
like for us to have a decision in the next month. If they want to do it, then I think we have a voice. It's a safety concern to have them working just the minimum firefighters involved.
Agreed. And it's about, I would say, if you think through the lens of the stress and the wear and tear on bodies, we're probably reaching our limit of folks being willing to work under those conditions before we experience a significant amount of turnover. And as you all know, turnover costs more money than just hiring the position in the first place. So if I was recommending to council, it would be to hold on the police sergeant and fund the 3 firefighters. And then we'll revisit the conversation either with Mr. Pinkhoffs and see how he can partner, or if he cannot partner, he and I have discussed an amount at this juncture. It wouldn't pay for a full position, but it would pay for the majority of it. We could look at where the funds would come for a sergeant, and we have exceeded our sales and use tax estimates for the past several years. We may exceed them again in the coming year, but I never want to overpromise and underdeliver. So I just want you to be very well aware that given what council's policy direction has been on maintaining fund balance, you do have the money in the bank account to fund all 4 of those if you make that choice.
Okay, I was told that we could leave the sergeant in there, but it would not need to be full year pay. The firefighter annual cost is $76,000. If we do 3 firefighters and sergeant for 3 months, that math still works. So that's an option too.
It's very possible, yes, but I would caution you to be sure and fold in the benefits. Because retirement, insurance, etc., the gear, it costs a little bit more than just the base pay.
And also want to think about, I mean, I know that we want to fill these positions, but do we have other options for this money? Equipment, something that, like you just said, the 20-year-old pumper, things like that. I don't.
So to replace those, council would go and we would likely purchase, even if we purchase new, we would still finance it out. That's not something that we have to reserve to save that money and pay cash. And by the time we get to where we would have that, the price is going to change and the ball is ever moving. So we would do something like we've done now. We'd enter into an agreement with GovCap or government capital, and we would finance that out and we would pay for that over a series of time. That will be a conversation that we'll have to have as we continue to move through this process, because none of us want to have to stand before a room full of residents and say, we didn't prioritize public safety. That's why you see only these requests out of the general fund. That's where our need is. It's not a want. This is a need. We don't even have 3 firefighters on each shift, which is the bare minimum. We have 1. And so I'm trying to incrementally move us to where we actually have the coverage that we have to have.
After being at the fire yesterday, a lot of the firefighters, senior and junior, who've been doing this as a volunteer, they do it for free. The op tempo that these guys working, men and women working, is to the point now where they're beginning to wonder if they can keep doing it. At some point, we've got to start slowly moving towards a full-time fire because the demands being placed on this skeleton crew we got is too much. And I don't blame them.
Yeah, we're sending people out on fire calls. We only have to look to recent news out in Decatur where there was a gentleman, a business owner, doing work in the old courthouse, and he did the work by himself without, he said he wanted to hold a ladder or anything. He fell and he's deceased now. But he had someone with him. I don't think we can do that to our city personnel.
That'd be a little bit.
Do we need to, is there a motion that we need to?
I would need direction because what I received at the last meeting was 2 firefighters and the sergeant. So if we're going to change and we're going to shift those funds, I would need to know from you also so I can make an adjustment before the meeting on the 12th.
I would say hold off on the sergeant and add a 3rd firefighter.
I agree.
So we would need a motion to that effect so that I can move forward.
I make a motion to, are we changing or are we just?
Yes. So we would be altering what you see on the screen here back to 3 firefighters, and you can authorize the police sergeant position but not fund it at this time.
Okay, I make a motion to change from police sergeant to 3 firefighters. And then we're just approving that position for the police sergeant, not funding it.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passed.
Thank you. So then looking at the bottom of this list, you will see the costs associated for the public works technicians. And at this point, we have an amazing public works director, and I tell him that every single day. And we have a great wastewater operator and water operator. And when I manage to get them in the office and they're not out in the field, they also get the same kudos. And we've hired a public works technician that's doing a bang-up job and fitting in very well with the team of 4. But we need 2 more, at least. But we could really use 2 more. And that is the lowest pay scale position in public works where we could augment those staff members, and you see the benefits would be about $118,000 additional in the utility fund. That discussion, we can go into more depth on the second meeting in September, but just know that I'm going to keep coming back looking for those positions. Unless council wants to move forward now.
Well, I kind of want to hear what the rate increase is going to be
That's fine.
also.
We can certainly do that. It takes us a long time to hire. So just be mindful that it will, would it take us 4 months last time, Jesus, to get a public works technician to come in?
Is this a fund? Are these going to be funded without an increase?
We're just running razor thin in the utility fund. Now, you could use fund balance to pay for them, but we would need to look at rate changes, which I'm going to urge you to do anyway. Even if you eliminate the 0 to 2,000 gallons of free water, which would go a long way to augmenting that cost, we cannot leave water and wastewater where it is, unfortunately. So I'm happy to bring it back at the second meeting in September. I just know that it took us literally 4 months to get one person last time, and that's really, it's hard.
I look at it the same way I do the fire department, police department. I don't want these guys up here by themselves working.
I certainly don't want them by themselves, but I also understand the position we're in where we're going to have to raise the water rates, and how much are we going to have to raise water rates, and how much are they going to be raised for businesses, and at what point are the businesses going to go, we're not coming in there because their water is just, holy crap, we can't afford to pay water. So I want this happy medium where, and I don't know where that is.
Well, I would definitely recommend to council, whatever we do, it's incremental. It'd be very difficult for me to recommend to you a massive move at once because people are going to need time to adjust to a variety of those changes. We do have some fund balance in utility fund. It's not as large as general fund, but we do have some fund balance, and we could offset some of that. I will tell you that in looking at the current budget for this year, even with the $165,000 in emergency expenditures, and we're still not quite finished, but Mr. Dominguez always comes in under budget. He does his very best with a limited amount of funds. But whenever I ask him what I can do and what he needs, every single time he needs help. So I can't stress it enough. Whatever decision we make, I cannot stress that enough.
So let's say we go ahead and
What if we said this? What if we said we would go ahead and hire one and fund one, authorize the second one, go ahead and post the first one, and have any time to get the posting. And then hopefully by the time we're ready, hopefully that job is really cool. And then we'll understand a little more, but that would be a good start.
That would be very helpful.
yeah, we can do it this month, then next month. I mean, if we decide that that's what we want to do, then we go ahead and fund the second one.
But at least we could get started.
Okay, so I move that we approve and fund one public works technician, and that we approve but not fund a second public works technician.
You have a second?
Aye.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you all very much. And I will say on behalf of your staff, we are very grateful for that confidence and for that direction that you've given us. So thank you so much. Moving on to the rest of the presentation, you have already reviewed all of this, but just to remind the community, these are the main infrastructure projects that we are working on in the coming fiscal year as fast as we can. The West Wastewater Treatment Plant will be replaced completely with a new package plant. We will be doing sanitary sewer line repairs on lines that feed to the West plant. And you will recall in the last budget presentation, I talked about the $300,000 that was left over from the 2019 bond. That will be packaged with the work we're doing on the West plant, but it will only pertain to lines that flow to the East plant because you cannot use that money for anything other than the East plant. So we're going to try and do some economies of scale and get a crew out here working on both sides, but we have a different funding source for the East plant work than what we do for the West plant. And then the water wells, as we have discussed, we've identified a couple of spots for that. One thing I'd also like to tell you on water wells in and of themselves. Well 6 with the CDBG grant is currently under remediation, and we are in process with that. So that's as well. Then looking at items that are unfunded and under discussion, just from the standpoint of general fund and or utility fund as we move forward, this is a list of things that staff have identified. Potentially, you will see that there's a very generic conversation here of fire apparatus replacement. You will also see that none of these have a year associated with them or any money, because at current, we are still dealing with the basic needs of the community before we can get to some of these other things. So I'll keep bringing this forward, and we'll keep trying to schedule this based on what our resources look like. And the same thing goes for utility fund. Based on the decisions that council makes on rates, will determine whether we have any capacity to look at a utility vehicle. And I discussed the need for that with you all the last time, or skid steer. You may have noticed that our public works teams are out and about on various roads in Rome this week and next with a crack seal trailer that we have rented, and they are getting all kinds of material. We are trying to do as much as we can, as fast and furiously, for the next 2 weeks to crack, seal, or seal the cracks in the majority of the roads. So if you see them, honk and wave, because they are definitely out there in the heat doing the hard work. Future council direction on a variety of things, as we discussed. This is not for today's, but these are things that we are keeping in our radar as we move forward. And so that concludes any presentation that I have on the proposed budget. At your next meeting, I will have the budget completely put together, and I will have a budget binder for you all to approve. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have based on what's coming for the next fiscal year. Thank you.
Amanda, at what point are we talking about the water rate?
At the second meeting in September, we will pick up the water rates, and we can amend the budget as necessary at that point.
We have to vote and approve the budget at our next meeting. We got it run that budget. Thou shalt not move money out of multiple pots. So, without vote. So we will have to revisit moving money around and reshuffle the budget.
Okay, that's all I had on the budget. Thank you.
All right, moving on, we have one more item we have to cover in executive session. Time now is 7:19. We have section 551.076, deliberation regarding security devices. Item number 3, 551.074, personnel discussing duties, discipline, dismissal of officer, employee, employer, complaint, or termination. Executive session, that's also also section 551.076, deliberation regarding security devices for security audit. Council will hold a closed session to discuss and receive reports regarding employment or implementation of security personnel or devices for a security audit.
This conference will now be recorded.
Time now is 7:52. We're out of executive session. Items as a result of executive session. Do I hear a motion to on cybersecurity issue?
Yes, as discussed in executive session, I move that we recommend the administrator pursue option 2 for a 1-year contract.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
I asked for clarity. We opted for the 1 year. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimously. Second item, the council has directed staff in the process of the search for a new municipal court judge. Do I have anything else from council? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Meeting's over.